Hello, everyone. This is Tijen Genco, Master Certified Coach and Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. You are tuned into Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tijen Genco. We have a few changes this time around to announce. Our beloved companion, Marta Regalado, stepped out of her role being my companion for the podcasts because she no longer does coaching. And we are lucky to have our another beloved Cynthia Lait stepping into that role. And we are lucky to have her. Welcome, Cynthia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And then we have two wonderful guests with us today, Nancy Hauschildt and Matthew Cintron-Quiñones. So welcome both of you. And so Cynthia, how would you like to introduce yourself to our audience before we ask to our guests to do the same?
Sure. So my name is Cynthia Lait, and I am also a coach, PCC coach, and I am focused on helping individuals design their careers and work through corporate transitions. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Nancy, what about you?
As you said, my name is Nancy Hauschildt, and I'm also a professional certified coach. And I am a coach in private practice, but I also coach, train, and mentor other coaches in training at Empower Coaching and Training Academy. It's a personal professional development organization for busy professionals. And just last year, we received our level 1 accreditation from the ICF, which was very exciting. And now I'm part of the senior faculty there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. And Matthew, what would you like our audience to know about you?
Hello, everybody. Matthew here from Cleveland, Ohio. I am a newly minted MCC Master Certified Coach and still enjoying the celebrations. I am primarily an executive coach for individuals who identify as Latino, Latina, or Hispanic, and helping them embrace their cultural roots to really create unique and effective and creative leadership. I'm also a really active ICF mentor coach and assessor who has such an affectionate relationship with the competencies, markers, and behavioral statements, for better or for worse.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, once more. And this is a podcast, an original podcast, everybody, that is presented by Genco Coaching, where we talk about self-awareness concepts as well as concepts that are helpful for the coaches. So today's concept is more so targeting to the coaches, and we are going to talk about a concept called ACC bars. So I will then ask Cynthia about that. Where are you going to take us to on that subject, Cynthia?
It's going to be a wild ride. So thank you, Tijen.
Well, maybe we will tame the ride a little bit.
All right. So my first question is for you, Tijen. What are ACC bars?
So ACC, well, maybe let's start before the ACC, that in the International Coaching Federation, there are 3 levels. For those of the audience are not familiar with that. Associate Credential Coach, which is abbreviated as ACC. Professional Certified Coach, that is abbreviated as PCC, and Master Certified Coach is abbreviated as the MCC. And the bars are behavioral anchoring response scale, rating scale, and that is a behavioral assessment instrument, which ICF adopted a few years back to standardize the credentialing instruments at the ACC and the MCC levels, finding that the bars being more effective in measuring the behavioral responses for the individuals. So ACC bars is an assessment instrument that International Coaching Federation uses to assess the behavioral responses that a coach demonstrate in a recorded session towards their clients for us assessors to understand and evaluate their skill levels.
Okay, thank you, Tijen. That was a really great explanation. So now I'm curious around the relationship between the ACC bars and the PCC markers, the MCC bars, and the ICF core competencies. It's all an alphabet soup.
It is. So I think it will be helpful for me to say to the audience that I actually assess for ICF at all 3 levels, and active participants in the assessors community, in fact, also leading the developmental activities for the co-leading the developmental activities for the MCC assessors in this year. So before the standardization of the ACC bars and MCC bars, there were some statements around supporting the assessors to evaluate. So when we are looking to evaluate anything, what we look for, now my geeky background comes in forward, we look for the agreeability within the assessor and in between the assessors. What does that mean? If I am as an assessor, can I actually evaluate something I evaluated 3 months later and come agree with my assessment? That is a within assessor agreement. And will my assessment agrees with Nancy or Matthew? That's in between the assessors. So in order to reduce the deviation, the ICF establishes certain measures so that the assessors carries not only the particular standards, but also can agree with the assessments. And so therefore, there were a lot of work went into developing PCC markers a few years ago. And that was the behavioral assessment tool back then to assess the professional level coaching credentialing. And they are different because there were a lot of work went into that. And then ICF developed the ACC and MCC bars later on. Now they carry 2 different instruments to assess the coach credentials. And so the bars are used for the ACC and MCC levels, and they haven't changed the PCC to the bars yet. I don't know the plans for that, but I assume eventually we will get there because there are other assessors like me that they are struggling to shifting between the assessment tools. So basically all 3 are the assessment instruments that the assessors are using to determine coach credential levels and the skills demonstration.
Okay. No, thank you for that explanation. It all makes sense now, Tijen.
I'm glad. Let's ask Nancy and Matthew if they have additional things they wish to share or ask about my explanation of those.
I think you explained it beautifully. I don't know that I could add anything to that.
Thanks, Nancy. All right.
Okay, so moving on. This question goes to both Nancy and Matthew. I've heard, you don't have to get a credential, you can coach without a credential, but there are benefits to getting a credential from the ICF. So you've both chosen to get credentials. What are the benefits of getting either an ACC or a PCC credential? Because they are a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. You want to go first, Matthew, or?
Yeah, I can go first. Well, Cynthia, I think in your question and your comment, you speak to it. It is a lot of work, but I also think doing that work shows a level that someone is really serious about this profession. I think as many people know, at least in the United States, coaching is unregulated. And you can look at that as both a positive, quote unquote, and not necessarily negative, but an opportunity, if you will. And so I think that making the choice to get a credential shows that you are committed to the field, you are committed to learning, and it also shows that you have some external third parties can verify. Like someone with the ACC non-negotiably has done 60 hours of training that's ICF approved, and they've demonstrated their coaching at the ACC level. And so there's a greater sense of reliability if someone's looking for a coach, if they're gonna, whether for personal development or if someone wants to hire a coach for a company. So I think it's a really great stepping stone to further credentialing, of course, that the person has done the work, cares about the field, and is committed to abiding by standards, competencies, and probably most importantly, a code of ethics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with all of he said. And really, I think what he's speaking to is that there is a professional credibility when you obtain any level of certification through the ICF. It's a rigorous process. It takes something to get your certification, not just through your coach training, but the experience requirements that are required at every level. And also the ICF has it's recognized worldwide. You go to any country and there's an ICF, chapter there. It's so focused on the core competencies. Like Matthew said, there's the ethical requirements that we abide by as professional coaches. I've been through both coach training programs where one of them was accredited by the ICF, one wasn't accredited by the ICF. And I can tell you that, there is different approaches to coach training. And I could always tell, in my opinion anyway, the difference between an ICF certified coach and a non-ICF certified coach. And as Matthew said, it's unregulated. So anybody can call themselves a coach nowadays. There's so many hundreds of schools available nowadays. And so I could imagine that starting out as a coach, it might be a confusing endeavor to dive into, like where do you start? But one thing that is very consistent with any ICF certified coach is the level of rigor and training that you receive, because we're all required to have that specific training and experience at every level. So you will see consistency through ICF certified coaches. And of course, it's developing those skills because they have these requirements. You are developing your skills. You have to have 100 hours of coach training, for example, a coaching experience for the ACC level. And so that tells you have to have some practice. You can't just go to a 30-hour training and there you go. You're a coach nowadays now, and you have all this experience, right? So there is a level of rigor. It's not easy, but just knowing for myself, I felt so much more confident going through that process of training and development than when just going through a regular training, just going out the door, and now you have the certification, right? It's a huge difference, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you both. There is also continuing education requirements and updating and upgrading your credentials, right? So there is a continuation and requirement to work with a mentor to continuously assess the skill set. So yeah, there are a lot of benefits, and therefore a lot of coaches make the investment into their credentialing. That is an investment. It's a business decision, but it also carries forward for the standards. Yeah.
And Matthew, I love that you brought up the code of ethics. I think that's an important part. When we coach, we expect our clients to be vulnerable and talk about things that are very personal. So to me, the code of ethics provides an additional support as a coach, helping our clients build that trust with us.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So moving on, continuing on with this theme, how does one prepare for their ACC credentialing? Nancy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I mean, aside from what is required for example, for a level 1 coach training program, which is, your 60 hours of coach specific training, all centered around the core competencies, of course. There is having mentor coaching. That's a huge component of training as a coach, is receiving mentor coaching, and you are required to have 10 hours of that for ACC level. You must pass a final performance evaluation, which is you demonstrating your skills as a coach. And as Tijen will talk about the ACC bars, but that's our behavioral assessment. That's what we use to assess these calls. And also pass the ICF credentialing exam. So all of those things are the requirement for ACC level. But aside from that, to best prepare for passing the ACC certification, I believe, is to really listen to your own coaching. Record calls, listen to them, do it as often as possible. That's the best way that you can develop your own skills as a coach. To listen for what am I doing well already? What are the areas where I can further develop myself, and to work with a mentor coach. I think mentor coaching is not just something that you do to pass the final performance evaluation or the coaching examination, but it's a continual practice for the lifetime of your, professional career as a coach. And I think that's one of the things that not a lot of coaches do. I know for me, for when I started coaching, I hated the sound of my voice. I couldn't stand listening to my own recordings. And so I would avoid it. I would avoid doing that. And so for any new coach listening to this call, I think that is the biggest way that you can sabotage your own growth and professional development as a coach. It's really get over like hearing yourself as a coach, and really not from a place of judgment. Listen through the lens of the core competencies. What am I doing? What could I work on? Listen to the feedback received from my mentor coaches and apply it, and then do it all over again. And doing that, I think, is the best way to prepare as a coach. Yeah.
Thanks, Nancy. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
Nancy, that was quite beautiful, really comprehensive. I think I would build upon just a few things. So not only it's working with a mentor coach, but finding a quality mentor coach. And that can have a variety of differences. But, just as coaching can look quite differently, mentor coaching can look quite differently. So really find a mentor coach as a person or a program where you look at recordings, you practice live demonstrations, you really integrate the feedback, and you are really practicing as much as you can. That's really one of the best tools that anybody can use, is to practice or to simulate whatever the thing is going to be. And with that said, continuously practice recording your own sessions, not just so much for listening to them, but the idea of being recorded. For instance, right now I can see a little red button saying recording, and that no longer makes me anxious, or it makes me just uncomfortable, because I've been practicing it so much. And so really ensure that you're getting comfortable with some of the things that you might not know you need to become comfortable with, such as knowing you're being recording, as well as finding some comfort with getting feedback. It can be really, even if your mentor coach is trained to give you the most professional feedback, it can still sometimes be really hard to hear that you didn't demonstrate certain competencies. And I would also say to laugh at yourself, make this a fun journey. I mean, one of my instructors once told me, and I still hold on to it, coaching is a really beautiful profession. However, you're also undoing lifelong learning and being a problem solver, telling folks what to do, getting through things quickly. And that's not coaching. We're really believing the other person is capable to move forward and to help them uncover their own answers. And so that really means that you are not the expert in their own life, and to really trust the other person. And I know how tempting it can be to be like, oh my goodness, the solution's right there, client. Why don't you do it? That's really not what's going to be best for them. And so as you work toward a credential and really realize we are assessing your ability to coach, and what ICF believes is coaching, and really you wouldn't argue when to use a comma, so don't argue with what it takes to get the credential. Have fun with it and make it your own. But understand it won't be an overnight thing. It's not just do one recording, send it in, have a nice day. If you're very lucky, I would love to talk with you if that happened for you. But otherwise, it's a good experience of trial and error and lots of learning.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you both. What I want to add there, I see it as a mentor often. Do not, I'm going to repeat, do not compare yourself to the mentor, right? That's there for an aspiration. And there is often an expectation of the coach participants that, oh, I will be master coach right in the very first session. Maybe you are, but that's okay to also progress, right? Give yourself an opportunities to partner with another being towards the growth, because coaching is also a very, very big self-development path for me that I would see. And when the coach doesn't see that way, but to see that they are there to help develop someone else, then it creates a gap and difficulty in their progression and credentialing and everything else. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up, Tijen, the fact that we're always developing no matter what.
Yeah.
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 So in the spirit of development, as a mentor for each of you, what are you noticing with your clients these days? Matthew, do you want to go first this time?
You mean with my mentor coaching clients?
Yes, with your mentor coaching clients. What kinds of things are you noticing?
Gosh, many things. Certainly it's, there's always some sense of how do I do certain insert thing here in a very certain way. And we can give that guidance. At the same time, we have to be responsive to the client and we have to really trust ourselves. Like, what do we really want to ask right now? What makes a lot of sense? Um, and what it becoming comfortable if the question you ask just does not fit with the client. It's totally okay. And so I have seen a lot of pressure to ask the perfect question, as if there's one possible question that's the one that I have to ask. And there may be one strongest question out there, but second strongest, third strongest, it's all part of the strength family. So you don't necessarily have to really demonstrate the best question every time. And the client's most likely going to get somewhere if you give them the space. And so trust yourself and keep practicing. I would also say there's a lot of people who want, can you just give me a list of powerful questions? I mean, I can. And I will give that just a slight bit of validity. And let me explain. I think it can be helpful if you find the words that you've been wanting to communicate. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to ask. I didn't have the right words for it. I think that is super helpful. But if it becomes a list that you can refer to and just pick and choose, I think that becomes a real big problem. You have to customize. And so there's, even though we're assessing something, we're also assessing a conversation, and a conversation is an art form. So it is tricky, and the best thing that you can do is just to be really responsive. And so if you find that list of magical questions, I would say buyer beware. You might get lucky once, maybe twice,
There is a coach selling them on Amazon.
Oh, wow. Why didn't we think of that? No, just kidding. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, the list of magical questions. Okay, I love that. Nancy, what are your thoughts when you're
Yeah.
mentoring clients? What comes up for you?
Well, same, also. And the thing about with the questions is that they won't apply. Even if you have like this question that, oh, I get that from Tijen. She has some amazing questions like, ooh, and then you're like, you can't use that. You can't really use that. It's like they go out the window. Honestly, like I'm a question collector and I have to throw them out the window, because when you're there and being responsive and present and in the moment with your client, those questions don't apply to this conversation. It's whatever is coming to you in the moment as a curiosity to ask, right? So As good as an idea as it sounds, it just doesn't work. But one of the things that I notice is they treat the core competency sort of like a checklist. They think that, oh, I have to, use this to pass this final performance evaluation, and they start creating a little checklist. Did I do this? Did I do that? Which of course kind of takes away from them being present, being responsive, being in the moment with the client. And sometimes that leads to not demonstrating other competencies that are important. So one of the things I notice is establishing that coaching agreement and not having a clear agreement. So I notice that sometimes our students could get lost in the conversation and going down different rabbit holes, and we never got this agreement, that what the client really wanted to work on. And so then it takes us all over the place, and that impacts the demonstration of other competencies as well. So that's one thing I noticed. The other is the tendency to problem solve. There's this idea that I'm going to be really helpful if I give them the answer, if I help them to problem solve this, if I, come up with all these ideas on, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And they want to be really, really helpful instead of just sitting back, listening, not have the answers, allowing your client to really process, what they're going through. So that's one of the things. Filling up the space. I think that's a big one too. It's just trying to fill the space, not giving enough space for silence and reflection and pausing. Always feeling like they need to fill the space in with more talk. And inevitably, it kind of counts against them when they're doing all the talking and the client is doing very little talking. So those are some of the common things that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say
Tijen?
that the most important tool for the coach is their capability of listening and appreciating another human being. And once that occurs, and coach can present what they heard in a clear manner to the client, then the rest is going to go and fall in its place in a session. And obviously, it has a different way of relating, different progression of the credentialing. I think that I gave the definition of ACC, PCC, and MCC assessment tools in the beginning. I didn't include the competencies in your question. The competencies are actually developed certain skill sets that our coaches needs to demonstrate. And going back to Nancy's point, that people tell me, oh, they are this and so hard and so on. And I say that it's not the chicken or the egg. The competencies are not there to assess the session, but a good quality session was the influence of the development of the competencies. So they are a collection of the good skill set that supports to bring another human being to a self-awareness. Again, in my mentoring, I often say that the most important outcome of the session is supporting clients coming to a new awareness that they didn't have before and enhancing it, because the action follows. Our clients are often capable of bringing themselves into implementation. So what I see then, as Nancy was saying, thinking about what am I going to do? What am I going to say? So then there is no listening and not relating to client at a level that needs to be related to. And that gets more into the assessment as the credentialing progresses. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Tijen. Thank you all. This question I think we've answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway, see if anything else comes up. And this is really directed at Tijen. What do you notice in a recording that demonstrates a poor performance during the ACC level assessment? We've heard some examples from all of you, but I don't know if there's anything else that comes to mind, Tijen.
So often that ACC level, we're looking the most simplistic behavioral demonstration. And the most thing get in the way that is coach not necessarily performing within the coach role. They are either solution provider or friend or whatever they think they are. They're not necessarily relating to the client as a coach. And even that they misunderstand the competencies and ask them, and I often say the competencies are not linear. As Matthew brought forward, the coaching is an art, right? The competencies doesn't happen once in the assessment. When we're assessing, we're looking for in the moment demonstration and throughout the demonstrations, and sometimes the contra evidences that we're looking for, the stuff that coach does that get in the way and negates what they demonstrated before. So all of it is part of that. And in the poor performance at the ACC level, that's what I see most, that the coach doesn't fit in the coach role, or that, as Nancy brought forward, there is no clear agreement. Then it's hard to assess, what am I listening to? What is this about? I mean, we still can look, and the poor performance takes much more effort to assess because you're really looking for an evidence somewhere, some kind of demonstration. So really, if the person learns to partner with somebody in a role of a coach, that not a solution provider, and listen and ask some level of questions, it is likely that they can demonstrate the ACC level behavioral indicators. So that's what I see often. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add, Matthew or Nancy, to that?
I would agree with you on that one. I think that's probably one that I see more consistently, especially in our organization, because we're working with, working professionals in different industries, and their jobs in their professional organizations, whomever they work for, is to problem solve. They want to, they're either case managers or they're doing something where they're helping people solve problems. And so it's hard to transition out of that and into that coaching mindset where they're not having to problem solve for people. So that's a big one that I see. And that, again, impacts their coaching. It impacts their coaching because they could ask a client, what would you like to work on? And the client will say something like, well, I feel like I just don't have time for all the things that I want to accomplish. And immediately their brain goes to, this is about time management. And then the rest of the questions that they start asking is about time management, where that may not be what it is that they really want to receive from the coaching session. And so there's a missed opportunity to really explore with the client, what is it that brought this conversation forth for this client? And sometimes because they're in a hurry to get to that coaching session agreement, they miss this entire conversation they could have to really understand, what is this really about? So that's a way that they, immediately, impact how they're demonstrating that very important competency, which is establishing that coaching agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would really add to that with the agreement. Very important. And a colleague of mine gave me a wonderful metaphor. And it's basically not having an agreement for a coaching session is like getting into an Uber without giving the driver the address and just hoping you're going to get somewhere. You really need to make it very explicit and to really figure out what are we doing here and where are we going. And to build off of something Tijen said not too long ago, but the competencies really overlap. It's not that you have to demonstrate just one thing going through that checklist. I think in the ACC bars, there's 19 behavioral statements. That doesn't mean you do 19 things and you're done, you pass. And that's not how that works. There's a lot of overlap. In fact, when I mentor coaching coaches, I often like to show an example of here's one thing you said, and let me look at my sheet and tell you how many markers or behaviors I've seen. And it can sometimes be 10 or 11. Not that it means they got 10 or 11 individual points toward their score, but it does show that there is so much overlap. So really worrying about all of those numbers and this, it's not going to be in service to themselves. So focus on the big themes and getting a clear topic and what the client needs and what they want. I mean, that's really, really huge.
Yeah, what Matthew said made me think about Alice in Wonderland, right? If you don't know where you're going, doesn't matter which directions you take.
I do think in that movie, the cat says it more optimistically. It does not work in coaching that way.
Yeah, so exactly.
So great points, and really, well, as you were all talking, I'm like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I was really good at that. So I recognize myself in a lot of what you said. Um, so at moving along, what was your credentialing experience like? We'd love to hear a little bit about what happened for you. So, Nancy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Let me think back. It's been a little while since when I first did my ACC credential, but for me, it was nerve-wracking. It was like I did all of the things that we've talked about that newer coaches do. It's like trying to perform, right? Are you like you're in performance mode with your call? Which call should I submit? Which is the best call? Which call? So a lot of things that I now see in the students that I mentor, it's um, stressing myself out more than I should have. And it's also a beautiful process that makes you grow as a coach and as a person because you have to address these things. You have to address the things that come up with you, right? The ICF gives us a clear, a guideline for what is required at each level. And so, making sure that you're practicing, making sure that you're doing all the things that we've talked about already is what's important. And so as soon as I got my head wrapped around that, that's when the process became more enjoyable. It's like, okay, this is what is required of me, and I'm gonna do this. So I had to get over my fear of listening to my own calls. I had to, really take advantage of that mentor coaching that I had. And it's a process that I feel very thankful for having.
Wonderful, Nancy. Matthew, do you want to share a little bit about yours?
Yeah, and as Nancy was sharing, I distinctly remember when I recorded my first session that I thought was tolerable for my mentor coach. And I remember like walking around the apartment like, I know I need to listen to it, but I don't want to hear it myself. I don't want to do this. And then I just did it, and then I just kept going with it. I mean, it's been so many recordings at this point. I don't think I'm ever gonna love the sound of my own voice on a recording, and that's okay, but I'm still gonna push through. But I got my coaching journey started really in it was right after I finished college. I just began hearing about just coaching techniques, or the coach approach to leadership was the quote unquote best one. I didn't know what that meant. And then it began with a Google search. It began with just a whole different world that became exposed to me. So I've always really had an appreciation and affection for the coaching profession. Certainly my knowledge of it really advanced once I got into more formalized training. Um, but yeah, I remember everything I did for credentialing was from my own, it was my own sense of achievement. Sure, having a different level could have helped, give an edge in a job search or whatnot, but really I did it all for myself, to be proud of myself, to show myself that I could do something challenging. So, I mean, I think that's the heart of my credentialing journey. Plus, I've also just everything that I really love, I tend to become not an expert, but like a little obsessed with knowing everything about it, whether it's a video game series or it's the foreign language. I'm like, how does this work in this dialect? So coaching was very much the same. So hence, I do lots of mentor coaching because I want to share that obsession with other people and also help them to demystify what might seem mystifying that may not be mystifying.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And Tijen, what was your credentialing journey like?
First, I could say that I stepped into coaching thinking I will change the people. And so I became aware I needed to change me first. So I actually didn't mind listening to my voice. My mentor, one of my mentors, and then my individual mentor was Marian Franklin. And she has a very directive and fun way of giving feedback. So I really was in sync with her, and I was like loving, devouring our sessions, even though she was like, that is not right, and so on. So I didn't mind it. And like Matthew, I was like, okay, well, I loved it. Let me do it again, and so on. So I actually went directly into the PCC level. There wasn't, ICF didn't allow to go to the MCC, even though I had the requirements fulfilled. So it took me a few years before I had to get into it to submit everything. So I actually very much liked and enjoyed that process of growth, seeing how I was changing, which is unlikely. Most people I mentor see it the other way around. They get frustrated not being the experts and so on, and they miss the best part of the practicum, the partnering up with somebody, and you already paid for. Why not get to miss? I don't get it, so I'm an outlier on that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you, I devoured everything. But so my experience was a little bit different. And you and I, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Tijen, was through my program, I had to do for my ACC, I had to do a live coaching demo with the assessors on the call at the same time. And it was nerve-wracking. And I thought I had my list of magical questions. And I failed the first recording because I wasn't present. I lacked all the present, and I wasn't partnering. And at first I was devastated. And then again, to your point, Nancy, I learned so much. And then when I went back a second time, again, another live coaching session, it was a 180-degree turn, but I had grown so much. So I think to everybody's point, it's such an interesting learning adventure, and you keep growing and developing.
Yeah, beautiful. Mm-hmm.
So let's move into your class, Tijen. You've got an upcoming masterclass for in-depth ACC bars exploration. And what inspired you to offer this masterclass?
Yeah, as a mentor, I like to support individuals in a way like a coaching so they can support themselves. And often that, and also taking roles in the ICF's assessor groups and functions, and even sometimes assessors are discussing, does that mean this and does that mean that? And there is the training available through ICF. I find it's helpful, but it's not necessarily giving sufficient hands-on, get your hands on a dough kind of a practice. So I figured that why don't I just do that, because I receive questions about what is this, how to demonstrate what to do. So that could actually be helpful for people that are preparing for their ACC credentialing, so they can learn how to assess their own recording. They can help themselves and have better dialogue with their mentors and not need to submit every recording to the mentor. They can also do that. That will help their development. And also will be helpful for the people that want to mentor others or assess other people's recording. So that will be supportive of their growth in the mentorship. So that's why I developed that training.
Wonderful. And Nancy and Matthew, I think both of you have signed up for the class. So what inspired you to take this class after Tijen developed it?
Well, for me, I've been working with Tijen for a couple of years now. I do most of her trainings. I love to learn from Tijen, and the way that she teaches is quite unique. And so, yeah, I'm a Tijen junkie, program junkie. But aside from that, like I said, she's a masterful coach. I love to learn from her. I love to hear her coach. And I just love to learn from the best. I'm a continuous student, so I'll probably always be doing something around coaching. But I also want to serve my own clients and students at my best, my highest level, give them good quality mentor coaching. So I'm always eager to learn more from masterful coaches like Tijen.
Thank you, Nancy.
Wonderful, Nancy. Matthew?
You know, very similar to how folks might say in coaching, your niche finds you. I think to some degree that can be same with mentor coaching. I have become very active in ACC assessing and mentoring. Not that I really wanted to. I'm like, oh, but this is fun. So I really, the class, given a chance to learn from someone who's an active ICF assessor and so experienced, I really wanted to dive into this. I know, especially folks who are at the ACC level or on their way, there's a lot of questions they have, and at times I don't know how to answer in a way that is what they're expecting in a quote unquote ACC way. I can give them what I've learned along my journey, but they might take a step back and think that's too much, Matthew. That's not what I asked for. So I'm really hoping to be able to really connect with other coaches and help them on their journey. And you know, when I grow up, I really want to be an ICF assessor. So I want to learn from all of the assessors who are around here. So let's start with ACC and hopefully that'll keep going for me.
Beautiful.
Wonderful, Matthew. So Tijen, who is the target audience for this class?
Yeah, I mentioned that either that the people who are preparing for their submission for ACC or anyone really, like because this is a CEU program that persons wants to develop their skill set, even they are not going to mentor another being, or they already have the credentials, they can still take this to understand the behavioral demonstration of the competencies. And specifically, though, I am targeting in my mind, but who knows, as Matthew said, what is this going to attract to? People are credentialing as well as the people are mentoring or aspiring to mentor at the ACC level and learn to how assess properly.
All right, thank you, Tijen. So as we get near the end of our time together, is there anything else you would like to share about this class, Tijen?
I think it is going to be in-depth. It's going to be fun. We're going to look at a lot of recording, a lot of assessment, and then individuals will be assessing them using the ICF bars instrument alone, or they can also partner with their classmates to assess. That's fun, right? When do you get to assess with another being? And then they come to the class and I have my own assessment, so we'll have a dialogue around that. So it is going to be a rich journey, a lot of assessment boot camp in a way that will be helpful. So yeah, it's a 5-week journey and 90-minute sessions, weekly sessions. But there is also a lot of learning and growth outside of those virtual live sessions.
And having taken your classes, Tijen, I know that the coaching goes very deep. So that's a big plus from being part of your classes.
Thank you.
So wonderful. So many takeaways from this time together. Understanding of the alphabet soup of PCC bar, or no, actually, they're ACC bars and markers and core competencies. Some great advice for those of you if you're trying to get ready for your ACC credential. And what I'd love to do now is invite each of you to tell us about any kind of events that you have coming up, and how can our audience find you and work with you. Matthew, how about you go first?
Yeah, I always have something going on. You know, anyone can really find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely where I'm most active. You'll certainly notice just look for the little squiggly line over the N in my second last name, Quiñones, you'll know you found the right person. But I'm an active ACC, PCC, and new MCC mentor coach. I really value being a support person for folks to get that credential and to have a lot of fun on the way and to really go beyond that checklist mindset, because there is so much more that can be done. And I like to believe the competencies work for us, we don't work for them. So how can we do that in a masterful, unique, and beautiful way? So that's where you can find me. Otherwise, I'm just enjoying summertime, and we'll see what else. You'll just find me. I just show up in random places. So now you know my name. Just keep an eye out.
That you do, Matthew. You do show up in a lot of places, but it's all in a good way. Nancy, tell us a little bit more about what you might have coming up.
Yeah, so same here. You can find me on all the social media channels, and I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, nancyhauschildt.com. And I do all kinds of things. I do love the mentor coaching, so I'm happy to work with individuals one-on-one, or if they want to be part of our mentor coach training program, we will be starting a new program starting in September, and you can go through yesempower.com and find more information there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. How exciting. And Tijen, what about you? What do you have coming up?
Thank you. So the ACC bars in-depth training is going to start July 2nd. We still have some room and time to register. So if anybody is interested, go ahead and do that quickly so you can join us and have fun. And then this year I reduced the number of group mentor sessions that I offer due to my scheduling. The next one is starting in August, beginning of August. So those of you listening to this interested in participating in a group mentor sessions towards your CEUs, develop or mentoring, group mentoring requirements, there is still few spots left on that. That's the only two things right now in the calendar. And I will soon be making the ICF knowledge exam prep course available. So keep an eye on that. That will be also helpful for any levels of credentialing. There will be a lot of live and rich case studies to prepare the applicant for that exam. So that's not available yet, but it will be anybody. So those of you that are watching this and yet to subscribe to the website, if you go ahead and do that, you will be informed about the upcoming events that are listed at gencocoaching.com, upcoming events.
I can see a lot of demand for the knowledge assessment test.
Yeah.
A lot of questions about that.
Yeah, I have a course for a few years now that we've been providing to the National Board Health and Wellness Coaching Certification. We have 100% success rate for that. It's available. And so I am bringing that sort of a rich case study experience into here. Obviously, as an assessor, I'm assessing worldwide. So those case studies are not only coming from my rich experiences in all the domains of the coaching that I do, executive life and well-being, but also coming from the worldwide assessments that what I hear in those sessions. So absolutely, yeah. Well, anything else you wanted to say, Cynthia, before we bring this to the close?
No, I just wanted to thank Nancy and Matthew for being here, for bringing all their points of view and great examples. So thank you for allowing me to be here. And Tijen, I'll let you close.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And thank you. Congratulations, Cynthia, for your first co-hosting with me. And thank you, Nancy and Matthew, your beautiful shares. And everybody, if you just tuned in, this is Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tijen Genco, an original podcast from Genco Coaching. And if you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing and leaving us a feedback, following us, and look for our new and different offerings. Thank you for being with us today.